Hey folks, good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to your January 24th edition of Forecasting Space with me, your host, Chase Wilson. This is the weekly show where we go over upcoming launches from the continental United States for the next 7 days and interesting space news going on recently and a photo of the week at the end of every show. As usual, we'll kick it off here, see what we have in store for the next 7 days for continental launches here out of the United States. I certainly sound like a bit of a broken record, but in just 5 minutes from now, we got Starlink Group 11-6. I say 5 minutes from now. This show goes up at 8 a.m. on Fridays, and at 8:05, we see the beginning of the window for this next Starlink launch. It could launch as far as 11:54 a.m., so we do have a bit of a gap there, but if it doesn't go off then, it might just be another day. But after that, we actually don't see too much going on. The next launch is going to be out of the East Coast. This one today out of the West Coast, but out of the Space Force Station at Cape Canaveral, we'll see Starlink Group 12-7 on Monday at 1:21 p.m. That also has about a 4-hour window, so it could be any time in the early to mid-evening there, heading later and later into the day. And then after that, on Tuesday at 9:30 a.m., we also have a launch. All right, that's pretty typical, but it's not an orbital launch, and it has some space tourists. This is New Shepard 29 from Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket. This is an interesting little thing because, like I said, it actually takes tourists up to suborbital launches. So, like I said, suborbital, it's not going into orbit. It's not going to go around the Earth. It just goes up to space and then comes and falls right back down. But you do experience, about 5 minutes of zero G. So this is going to be an interesting experience for those commercial astronauts, right? And you can also put a little bit of zero G cargo on there just to do a little bit of experiments with it, right? So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty fun there. That's going to be out of West Texas. So this is kind of unique in its own right because it's not launching from a coast. Coast is usually chosen because you're dumping a bunch of stages out in the ocean. But like I said, this thing's reusable, right? So we're going to see that land back down safely, hopefully with the crew, right? That would definitely be unoptimal if not otherwise. And then that very same day, just 12 hours later, in fact, almost exactly 12 hours later, to be exact, 12 hours and 4 minutes later on Tuesday, we see Spainsat Generation 1. That's actually the newest generation of Hisdesat's new satellites, which is going to be a commercial launch from SpaceX. This is going to be out of Kennedy Space Force Center. We're seeing a nice night launch there. And then Thursday at 4:44 a.m., nice and early. If you're up for that, Godspeed to you. It's another Starlink launch, Group 12-3, again out of the East Coast there. We don't see anything else for the next 7 days here out of the continental United States. That just about concludes the launches out of the next 7 days, but there's been some interesting space news over the last week or so. Mainly, at least in my opinion, huge launch of Starship Flight 7, which was a mixed bag in terms of success. Some successes and some failures. Let's talk about that. Like I said, it's sort of a mixed bag as to whether or not you call this a failure or a success because we kind of saw both, right? The first stage, that massive super heavy booster, landed back magnificently. And by the way, that's despite the fact on ascent, or at least in terms of the return boosting back, it actually lost an engine. But even still, it was just fine. So that was amazing, right? It never gets old to see this catch. And we've only seen this catch twice now. It tried to land the last time, but couldn't quite make it, so they put it down in the Gulf. But the second stage is where things got a little hairy, right? On ascent, we noticed some engines starting to poof out, right? It has 6 engines, 3 vacuum Raptors and 3 sea-level Raptors, and one by one, we started to see these kind of flicker out, right? And that's trouble, right? It's definitely not a nominal trajectory. And then not too long after that, we started to see some incredible images out of the Turks and Caicos, right? From people on the ground near sunset of just massive sparks, flames, space debris falling through the atmosphere, which clearly indicates something went very wrong. And honestly, in my opinion, I would call this a failure because the second stage is the most important part of the vehicle in terms of mission capability, mission success. So, this is a test campaign. These kind of things happen. It's not too unexpected, but definitely something worth investigating, and the FCC, FAA certainly are, right? FAA especially, because we actually had some of that debris coming down over some flight paths, right? So that's not too good. But you know what? Like I said, such is the path of tests like this. I mean, some of this video was just incredible coming out of the Turks and Caicos area. I mean, you really don't see stuff like this too often. Clearly, something went very wrong. As a matter of fact, Elon said there was a leak in one of the venting areas at the bottom of the ship, which caused a rapid unscheduled disassembly, or in other words, an explosion, a big boom. So they're already starting to remedy this fact. So hopefully Flight 8 will go a little bit better. But you know what? This kind of stuff happens. Speaking of Starship, my photo of the week is from Don Petit up in ISS, right? So way up there in orbit. He actually saw that launch happen and he took a photo, which is going to be my photo of the week here in just a second, of that launch. You can see the plume. Just incredible, the things you can see. Take a look at this. Yeah, there it is, right? You can see that plume. It just so happened that the launch was occurring as the ISS was in line of sight of the launch pad, so you can kind of see some details being made out here. Now, you can't really make out too many specifics of where exactly the ship is, but clearly it was in the landing phase at this point because those plumes don't last too long with all the wind shear out there. Don Petit also, by the way, caught the Blue Origin New Glenn rocket, which I'll show here as an honorable mention real quick, just the other week. So he saw both of these launches in collaboration with his son on the ground, which is just incredible, right? If you follow these on Twitter, both of these folks, you'll see that they really collaborate and try to plan these things out. It's really, really fun to see them trying to get these shots because it really gives you a new perspective, right? I mean, usually we watch these from down here on the ground. Maybe if we're lucky, we get an aerial shot from NASA or SpaceX, but all the way from space, it's a little bit of a feedback cycle, right? Watching something come back up to space and looking down at it on the ground, it's kind of interesting, kind of trippy to see from this perspective. One of my favorite things, to be quite honest with you there. So this is magnificent. I certainly hope Don Petit is still up there for the next couple of launches of at least Starship, right? Because I would love to see some video of that, right? Imagine seeing re-entry of that thing from space. Could you imagine that? That would be epic. So I'm hoping, as an honest nerd, that Don Petit can get something amazing out of these next couple launches. Yeah, I'd say that just about concludes this episode of Forecasting Space. Tune in next week. We'll see what we got coming over the next 7 days from now. As usual, I'll see you then.